Hello guys and welcome to the Gamer Beans. I'm Hotfix and today I'm going to do in Warlock again, seeing as this update has changed it a bit. I felt like I couldn't be bothered to just do a update on the uh, written guide I did, so I thought I'd do a video guide as well. So to start off with, we shall get the spec. It's 61 Warlock again, 8 Pyromancer, so you got full and burning fury for the critical hits, fury concentration because you're spamming void bolt a lot, and then ignition to reduce the cast time of it just for the 2 points. As for necro, you're going to be having damage, increase your damage, and also flesh rot. You may be thinking, why are we going for flesh rot and not, for example, Harbinger for 5%, 10% more spell power, and the damage, and the blazing light? Well, because if we use necrosis, it also goes with void declamation, which increases your void bolt and void barrage by 10% for each death dot we have on, and it also fits in nicely with the rotation for empowered darkness and void barrage, so that's perfectly fits in there. What else? Then there's not really much else for those two, why we have pyro or necro, but that's pretty much it. For the also on necro, you can actually use the level 30 pet. Yeah, it might die because it's only got not hardly any health at all. It should have like around 3, maybe 4k in raids health, so that's pretty lame. If you spawn it, it'll mobly pull the boss because of the aggro range it has. But if you do manage to get it, it will put deathly calling on the boss, and then you can use discreet from necro, from the points in necromancer, and that will give you around about 200 to 300 DPS if your pet survives the rest of the fight. If it doesn't survive, then no point of respawning it. It's just an extra little bonus. So macro wise, there is quite a few stuff you can do for macros. So for example, you can add cancel buff, contaminate, and then cast sacrifice life for damage. You can do put in cast empower darkness, cast no active, contaminate, cast void barrage. But I really hate that macro because when you it says cast empower darkness, and then you've got, because you don't have contaminate on, it will try and put contaminate on while it's casting void barrage at the same time, so it completely cancels, or it doesn't actually, it ends up not even casting void barrage at all. So that's why I don't macro those, and I don't really like macroing cast no actives anyway. In the persist, so you got the stop casting. I use that because sometimes I try to get a little bit more DPS, but it ends up not being enough. And then we have the spam macro, which is for Warlock, which is pretty simple. Draining Bolt, you can take it out and have it cast on yourself. So if you want to change mobs, or you have all your dots on one mob and you just want to keep on DPS and another one, Void or the Draining Bolt does more damage for death dots you have on. So I guess, but I don't know, I'll have it in here because you always have your death dots on, so you might as well just have it instant in your macro. You've got countdown, because that's more damage than void bolt, and then we have flame bolt if you're moving. You can stick in ninja's torch, torture in the end if you're moving, but the thing is it has a 10-second cooldown and it's on the boss for 16 seconds, so you might as well single cast it if you're moving, but it's there if you need it. As for macros, that's pretty much it. I've only really have those two. Yeah, you can add loads of different ones for Deathly Pal and Salvage Corruption. You can do it on cast Salvage Corruption on target, cast Deathly Pal on whatever you're doing now, and then cast Salvage Corruption on the target you're on, and cast Deathly Pal on your focus or different marks. You can do all sorts of stuff with this macro. It depends what you really want to do with it. So that's a lot of things, and then you got obviously the AoE one, devouring shadows, so you can stop casting and move it around. So for this spec, what dots are you going to need? You're going to need all the dots again, so Dark Touch, Anti-Pony, Necrosis, Life Leech, and Defile. Also Death Store, but you can't use that until 50%. So Anti-Pony, what does this do? Anti-Pony dot. This makes sure when you're refreshing your dots, you leave it as long as possible, because Anti-Pony does more death damage the longer it's on for. As for Necrosis, remember that now it's on 14 seconds, so instead of watching Anti-Pony on your Carol alert, change it to Necrosis because it's only 14 seconds long. As for those dots, there's not really much to it. Only for Death's Door, make sure you use that when Necrosis is on 8 seconds left to go, because then when you use Persist or Void Barrage to reset or refresh the Death dots, Death Door will get refreshed, and then you can re-put it back on again when Necrosis is on 8 seconds left to go. So that will increase. This is Death Door is our most DPS dot, and it will increase our DPS quite a lot. Because if we look at the Death Door right now, it's on saying 13.2k damage, and then look at Anti-Pony, which is 11.5k damage. But Anti-Pony is 16 seconds long, where Death Door is only 8 seconds long. So it's 2k more damage on the death dot, how much it would do, but it's also 8 seconds long, so it's doing twice as much damage than Anti-Pony by the time it's up. So that's all good. Anything else? We have a little bit of AoE. So we have Radiant Death. Radiant Death now is changed. So on the additional points, it now does Anti-Pony as well. So we do more death damage, cleave, which is quite good for quite a lot of bosses. For Kane on the Blood Thieves, and I believe it's also quite good on the boss after Kane on in Endless Eclipse. I can't remember the name of it. So the final thing we really need to note is Empower Darkness, Sacrifice Life Damage, and Contaminate. You want to kind of swap in between these all the time, kind-ish. You want to use Empower Darkness, not when it comes off cooldown, but you want to use it when Necrosis is on about 1 second left on the dot. So you use Empower Darkness, and then you either use Void Barrage or Persist, depending on where you are in the fight. And then as soon as you've done that, when you come to the next refresh, your Empower Darkness will be on like 1 or 2 seconds left to go before it runs out. So that means you'll have another chance of using Void Barrage or Persist to refresh your dots. So instead of having just one set of dots getting 40% more damage done, you're going to get 2 rounds of dots getting 40% more damage done, which is good. Once Empower Darkness is off, you always want to use Contaminate to refresh your dots. So you use Contaminate on Void Barrage just before Void Barrage or Persist if you don't have Sacrifice Life for damage. The only time you're ever going to use Sacrifice for Life damage is when Empower Darkness is off cooldown and after you've refreshed your dots. So after you refresh your dots, you're going to use Sacrifice Life for damage because it's 20% more damage done on the spam spells you do in between. And then once you have those two off cooldown, just keep Contaminate on up all times, because due to the Warlock crystal, you do 200 more damage on your... Oh, I'm even using the wrong crystal. But yeah, you do 200 more damage on Void Bolt, really. So make sure that you use that whenever these two are off cooldown. So how are we going to start this rotation? We're going to start it off with Life Leech, Anti-Pony, Necrosis, Defile, and then Dark Touch. After we've done that, you want to add on Empower Darkness and then use Void Barrage. So right at the start we have quite a big burst damage so that we're not leading off low dots or whatever. And then just keep on spamming the macro. And then as soon as this is all done, then you use Persist, and then you use Sacrifice Life damage, keep on spamming your spells, and then you just carry on using Contaminate until these are all over, and just keep on switching between Persist and Void Barrage. They will also, you'll also get decreased because of the pet, maybe if it survives, and you'll also get a new buff, which is on the Warlock armor. We have a 20% damage. Death spells have a 20% chance to make your next Consuming Agony within 8 seconds instant and reduce its mana cost. So this was pretty good. Sometimes it doesn't really proc that often, so if you get an opportunity and it's off cooldown, I would advise using Consuming Agony. You might then get a Consuming Agony when you're using your spam macro, but you know, you can still, you might just be able to get it off again, so it's more damage. And then make sure you start off with your fight with max charge, so the beginning rotation actually works well. Apart from that, you do have some cooldowns and stuff, but let's see how it goes for a second. So we're gonna start with Life Leech, and then go for Antipony, Necrosis, Defile, Dark Touch, and then Empower Darkness and Void Barrage. So we have pretty high damage from the start, and we've got the the proc. So as we just keep on spamming our macro, and there we go. We've reset Necrosis, and it's also in time of Empowered Darkness, which is awesome. I forgot to use Sacrifice Life for damage for more damage, but it's quite hard to remember talking and doing this at the same time. So now I've got none of these two up, so I'm just going to be using Contaminate. And there we go. This is really the rotation. It's not really hard. It's just make sure you do a lot. Well, I don't know really. It's not hard at all, and you should be fine. So now I can use Sacrifice Life damage straight off the bat when refreshing my cooldowns, which is awesome. And use Empower Darkness and Persist when, see, I use Empower Darkness when Necrosis was on like 1 second to go, and then refresh my dots so that when it comes to using Void Barrage in a second, it refreshes my dots again, because it's the initial death tick from Void Barrage that refreshes it now, not the after effect. I've got to use Sacrifice Life damage again, but you know, I'm pretty forgetful. So as you can see right now, I'm doing nearly 11k DPS, which is, I believe this is our most competitive range DPS right now. And considering that we're actually not using all the abilities that we could be using, we're not using Death Store. And I forgot to mention, you should be using Nedra's Grasp as well. If the mob uses 3 stacks of Nedra's Grasp during the time of while you have it up, then it's a DPS increase to keep on using it. If it doesn't, then don't use it. So now we've got the Empowered Darkness up again for more damage, and it's pretty much a really nice spec. The only bad thing about this spec is if there's a lot of movement, then you're using the wrong spec completely, because this doesn't go very well with movement at all, seeing as most of it's casting Void Bolt. There's a few instant casts in there, but there's not many really. So this is the Warlock spec. I just hit 11k DPS there. I believe you should be able to do this fine, and it's pretty easy spec if you get it right. I believe there are changes to Harbinger, Pyrobinger, and the changes to Elementalist make it a little bit better, and there are changes to, what's it called, Necromancer as well. So I'll try and get those specs and test them out and do that. So I've been AlphaXX for the Game Beans. See you later.